School of Chess, with another Quick Bites video for you. I'm so excited to talk to you again about another awesome day of PogChamps. For those who don't know, PogChamps is the awesome collaboration between chess.com and some really famous streamers and celebrities teaming up so that these top coaches can train these famous streamers and have them compete for thousands of dollars. It's been super exciting. It's really helped it blow up for chess. Let's just get right to it. Today's game that we're going to talk about was the match between Pokimane and xQc. For those who know, this is Pokimane, very, very famous streamer, and this is xQc, also extremely, very, very famous streamer. I do believe that Pokimane is more of a variety streamer, whereas xQc has become more of a variety streamer, but started off with Overwatch, I believe. Anyways, let's just hop right into it. So, I don't know how it's gone for this time around, but in the past, Hikaru Nakamura was training Pokimane. I'm not 100% sure on xQc's coach. Let's get going. So d4, d5, bishop f4. Something that you know if you've been watching Pokimane is that she's been playing a lot of the London system. That's where you get this bishop outside like this. It's pretty standard system, and I've watched Hikaru kind of explain it to her. She'll put her knight here, pawn up here, bishop here, and pawn here, and kind of create this little hat, as Hikaru puts it, and just kind of this nice little safety net. So xQc develops normally, e3, e6. Not my favorite move. It opens up the bishop, but it really does lock in this bishop, and so we want to avoid that. I probably would play bishop f5 and get the bishop outside the pawn chain first. e6, knight f3 standard, knight f6, bishop d3. Pokimane is just following her normal strategy, and it works really well for her. Bishop e4 check. Pawn c3 attacking the bishop. This wasn't the best move in the world. You know, she wanted to play this move anyway, so we're kind of walking into her idea with attack on us. Bishop d6 saves it. Knight e5. If there's something else that Hikaru has drilled into Pokimane, is the power of placing that knight on e5. And here we find xQc's first mistake, and that's knight takes knight. Maybe expecting the bishop to take back, but Pokimane correctly played d takes e5, guarded by the bishop, forking the knight and the bishop, and this is going to lead to the loss of something. After pawn g5, this is a clever move xQc is using to try and turn the tide. Maybe Pokimane will take the pawn and stop covering this, but she correctly knows that that is what needs to be guarded. Saves here, knight h5. Pawn takes bishop, takes here, takes back, and takes. So now Pokimane is up 2 points, and what do we do when we're up in points? We keep things simple and solid, and we swap the pieces. Pokimane would love nothing more than to swap off the queens, the bishops, the rooks, and all that stuff. Yeah? So, bishop takes h7. Trying to win some points. I might have played rook takes to force the rooks to get trade off. Now we're kind of in a pin, so we want to be careful about that. Queen b6, queen b3, trading queens. This is all in our favor. e5. Now this move has a very, very clever little idea behind it. And that is because the rook is pinning the bishop to the other rook. If this bishop were to move somewhere, we would happily slide down there and take that free rook. And what do we do to pin pieces? We put pressure on pinned pieces, as my buddy Funmaster Mike likes to say over at chesskid.com. Or as my coach used to say, you pin it and you win it. We want to play bishop to f5 and attack that bishop again. Normally we wouldn't. It just seems like a free piece, but if that bishop takes us, that rook takes here. Now what should happen here is something that guards the rook. Maybe, or actually that's kind of hard, isn't it? The only move that guards the rooks are here, but that would be taken by the bishop, and that would be taken by the pawn. I think we have to be clever here. I think we need to play this move, rook h5, which doesn't seem like it works because the rook is still not defended. But after bishop to f5, I think we have the very clever move, bishop to g6. And there's no time to take this bishop because of rook takes rook. And if they play rook takes rook, we save our bishop. Also notice, I believe, that if bishop g4, trying to attack our rook, we play rook takes g5, threatening the bishop, and they're still not here. Even better than this is rook g8, check skewering the king to the rook. So this all works out tactically, I think. But unfortunately, this is pretty clever, pretty advanced. And Pokimane, as experienced as she is and how good she's gotten, this is tough to see. Instead, we played e4, trying to keep that bishop out, but after pawn takes pawn, we didn't know what to do anymore, so we went back to developing. xQc put pressure on that pinned bishop. We can't save it anymore, so we play f3, takes, castle, and castle. And now basically, it's like we almost have a new chess game, because the points are totally even, and both sides are castled, and there isn't too much different between the two positions. As an advanced player, I noticed that White's pawn structure is really broken up on the king side. These pawns can only be protected by other pieces because they're isolated, whereas Black doesn't have that problem. But is that enough of an advantage to drive it home at this level? Rook d3, knight c4, trade, f6, knight e3. And this, unfortunately, this right here, it's hard to see, okay? xQc wants to take this pawn, but rook takes rook would be a problem. And that pawn's hanging too. And we want to save our pawn on e5 because it can be protected easily. Now in this position, what we should play is king e2. This pawn is weak and vulnerable, and we should get ready to guard it. Instead, Pokimane plays knight e3, which makes a lot of sense. She's trying to go into maybe d5 and hit the f6 pawn, maybe knight g4, but unfortunately, rook d8 check. We get out of this pin with gain of time. Now White has to save the king, and boom, we win that pawn, which is actually more crushing than you might think. It's not just the loss of this pawn. It's also the fact that White's center is gone, and the e5 pawn is now passed. Rook h6. I do commend Pokimane for keeping super active. f5, g4, trying to break it up. f4, knight f5, bishop takes g2. Another pawn falls, and now suddenly there are two connected passed pawns, and they are looking to roll very fast in our direction. Knight e7 check, king b8, rook g5, g6. We're trying to start picking out these pawns. Check, here. This is a tough call, okay? We really have to pay attention to calculation in this position of what's going to happen. On one hand, we don't want that pawn to become a queen, so blocking it makes tons of sense, but it also invites the next move, rook d2 check, super powerful. I think we need to play king e3 in this position, keeping an eye over that pawn and still preventing such moves. Because after this check, here, and push. Now this is a super important move, okay? Here was Pokimane's last hope, I think. In this position, if we had gotten too eager and simply grabbed a pawn or started trying to push things too quickly, rook g8 check, back rank checkmate would have changed everything in a heartbeat. Instead, xQc saw that, made sure to give some room to run with the king, and then it was all over. Black was able to make a queen, and that was game. It goes on for a little bit longer, but as most of us know, when you have a queen and your opponent doesn't, most of the time it is just over. So great game played. Pokimane came out with a very strong preparation of the London system, placed that knight in e5, and xQc took the wrong way, allowing that fork. But thanks to a lot of active play on xQc's part and some pressure on that pinned piece, again, I think the two highlights of the moment of this game are, you know, this one moment where it's the knight takes knight fork, and that wins Pokimane the piece and avoids the complications, followed by the amazing bishop to f5 idea, which wins that piece back, and then, you know, just really awesome active play by xQc in the endgame, and this was a well-deserved win. So yeah, it looks like I think xQc is going to be going on to the championship bracket, and I think Pokimane is now going on to the consolation bracket, if that's how that works. Either way, this has been an amazing journey. I cannot wait to see what happens. And yeah, if any of you happen to know either of these amazing people and can get them to, you know, put in their two thoughts on what they think of this video or anything that they have to share about their thoughts of the game, you know, hit me up. But anyway, National Master Jesse Cohen, Some School of Chess. I will see you next time. Bye for now!